Are you interested in academia? Are you fascinated about all the intricate details of the tenure track process? Have you ever wondered what it takes to have a relatively successful academic career? Well, you are at the right place at the right time. My friend and guest in this episode talks about exactly that. He talks about his own academic journey from a grad student, and he's now an associate professor. He gives us some insights and advice that applies to the tenure track process specifically, but to life and professional careers in general. So I'm really excited to share this with you. I hope you have fun listening and that you are able to assimilate some of the pearls of wisdom that our guest shares with us today. Thank you so much for listening. Enjoy today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of our podcast. We are very privileged to have our friend Dr. Tolu Sajobi joining us today to talk about some of the insights that he has learned and acquired in the course of his academic career. Dr. Tolu Sajobi is joining us today from the University of Calgary, and we are very privileged to have him here. Tolu, how are you? Good to have you here.
Hi, Albert. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for making time. Who is Tolu? Can you give us a little bit of a background of your life, where you are now and what you do?
Sure. Thanks again for having me. So I'm Tolu Shajobi. I'm an associate professor in the Cummings School of Medicine at the University of Calgary. My expertise is on medical statistics and a bit about data analytics and how to design clinical studies. At the University of Calgary, I'm a statistician, a senior statistician, where I provide support for a wide range of clinical groups, including researchers in clinical neurosciences, in neurology, and also in cardiology, and also generally, I'm also involved in supervising students. I have a research lab where I mentor and supervise up to 8 graduate students at the moment. And that's a bit about me. Personally, in terms of my background, I'm a Nigerian. I grew up as a Nigerian, moved to Canada in 2007 to start my master's. Before then, I completed my bachelor's degree in mathematics and statistics from Obafemi Awolowo University in Nigeria, and worked briefly in management consulting in Accenture before switching gears and coming to grad school in Canada. So in 2007, I went to University of Windsor, Ontario for my master's in statistics. And then in 2008, I moved to University of Saskatchewan to pursue my PhD in biostatistics. And so I finished 2012, worked briefly in industry for 9 months before I joined the University of Calgary in 2013.
Okay, that's a very impressive profile. Would it be fair to say that you are a rising star in your field in Canada? Would that be a fair description of your current status?
Oh, I don't know if we can say that. You don't blow your own trumpet, right? Right? But I'm doing the very best I can, and just one of the people trying to do my best to move the field forward.
Thank you for your humility. So, in terms of impact, I noticed from your profile that you have quite a few publications and quite a bit of research funding that I could genuinely say that you have a thriving research program. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah, it's actually so. I have over 120 publications right now, and this has to be put in context, right? So if you're in medical sciences or health sciences, I will do a lot of collaborative work, and also I've been quite successful with research funding. So my research group has been largely funded by Canadian research agencies like the NSAC, which is the National Science and Engineering Research Council, as well as the CIHR, which is the Canadian Institute of Health Research. As a PI, I've had funding over nearly 1.5 million so far, and also I've contributed to other research groups up to like $20 million.
Wow, that's very impressive. And looking back at your life, and I really one of the goals of this podcast is to kind of share the narrative of young Africans with other sort of prospective people who are looking to follow a very similar career path. Like how was your childhood? How were things for you growing up? Was your family fairly wealthy, or were you from sort of a middle income? How was your childhood like?
Oh, thanks for asking, Albert. Well, I grew up from a family of teachers. My father was a high school teacher. My mom was elementary school teacher, and so I grew up from that. We're not middle family. We're not middle income. We're not rich. We're just a low income family. But yeah, our parents emphasized the place of education, but most importantly, becoming the best in whatever field you choose to pursue. So I had a father that was a math teacher. So I tell people that I probably got my flair for numbers from him, actually. So that was just growing up, just like every other person, trying to care for your family and support them and inspire them to grow up, to actually be a valuable member of the society. And that's how I was raised.
Okay. And when you say that your dad was a math teacher, I mean it all makes sense to me now. I can probably say that math is in your genes, right? Because I had a very tenuous relationship with my own math teacher at high school. In Africa, at least in Ghana, at least the math teacher will come with a cane, and so that I didn't like. Why did you choose to study math? Was it more of the influence from your dad, or was it just sort of your own passion? Why math?
Oh no, I actually ended up studying math by accident. I did
Oh,
not plan to study mathematics, right?
right.
Back those days, if you say you're going for a single honors, math, biology, physics, the next thing I'm not sure if the same thing in Ghana, but in Nigeria, they're going to say, okay, are you going to become a teacher? And teachers are not well paid, by the way. So everybody wanted to study medicine, engineering. So personally, I wanted to study chemical engineering, right? So because Nigeria is an oil producing country. So engineering, getting a job in an oil company is the dream of every child growing up back then, right? So I also wanted to be like that. But then I finally ended up being given my major was math. So I was just like, I'm not going to do anything math, right? So I sought every way to just, switch my major from mathematics to engineering, but it was not successful. After 3 tries, I was just like, okay, I'm just going to give up, finish this degree, and then go back and study chemical engineering all over again as a second degree. So, but in my final year, I got one of my professors, a junior professor in my department, one of the lecturers, we met and we were talking. I was just like, okay, I'm going to go back and do engineering. And we're just like, no, you shouldn't go back. There's lots of opportunities in what you're studying in mathematics and statistics. And it was telling me that the future was about data. And I really didn't, at first, I was just like, okay, what's this guy talking about? Did they pay him to kind of keep me in this department and just, but with time, meeting after meeting with him several times, and he actually became my mentor. And he actually convinced me, showed me the opportunities that are out there with math and statistics. And that since then, I just decided, okay, this is what I'm going to be.
Sure. How did you choose to go into academia? I mean, I think from your intro, you had mentioned that initially you went into industry. Can you talk to us a bit about now transitioning from your PhD, post Saskatchewan, into your industry job, and then eventually into your academic job?
Yeah, thanks, Albert. When people find out I'm a professor, they kind of say, "Oh, he's been very good from undergrad," and so
Right.
maybe that was just natural for him. Actually, it wasn't natural for me to be a professor. Throughout my PhD, I didn't want to go into academia because I felt, oh, it's a very stressful career. But I have a supervisor that kind of felt Tolu from the first day she met me. She was just like, Tolu, you're just so wired for academia. The way you think about your research, the way you do your literature review, the way you come up with questions, you're no doubt a material for academics. And I was just like, no, I don't like it. This is you. I see how you work hard, prof. You send emails at odd hours of the night. I don't want to do that. I just want to get a paid job, go in the morning, come back in the afternoon, and that is it. And we kind of had this debate back and forth until I was almost rounding up my PhD. But we kept talking about it, and one day she told me, and we struck a deal. I said, okay, if you start applying for jobs, apply for academic jobs, also apply for industry jobs. So I was just like, okay, deal. We'll apply for both kind of jobs. So
Right.
just before I finished, I just kept applying, and I finished my PhD in 3.5 years. So it was just like, oh, everything is you just so good. You're publishing papers, just go ahead like that. So, but just before I defended my thesis, I had my first offer from a biotech company in Saskatoon as a biostatistician to work with them in the area of metabolomics research. And that company was developing cancer screening tests for colorectal cancer, colon cancer, and so I was supposed to be the R&D biostatistician for them. So I just said, I'm going to the industry. Of course, my supervisor was disappointed. So I started off working as a biostatistician for a metabolomics group. But then I got bored very easily, and that continued for a while. And the manager was quite smart and was just like, you know what, we should put you in R&D. So they moved me from the main pool of analysts and moved me into R&D, and I was writing papers and I was writing proposals. And then I kept asking myself, what makes this different from being an academic, right?
Right.
Because you're doing postdocs, you're doing research, and they were quite gracious. The company was quite gracious. They gave me one day off for my research. So I still had opportunity to collaborate with my supervisor, and we'll talk about my experience. We'll be like, you really sure you want to be there a long time, right? But luckily, all the interviews that I did just before I started the academic job in Harvard, so they started, inviting me for interviews. And then finally, I decided to after being there for 5 months, I kind of realized that, this is just, I think I'm more wired for academia, and everything I've been doing in the industry is quite academic as well, of course. But I don't have the independence or the academic freedom to pursue whatever I like. And at that point, I was just like, I think, I'm actually wired for this kind of work in academia. And so when CAGRI came calling, I just said, yeah, let's see what CAGRI has to offer. And that was how I actually moved into academia in 2013 without doing a postdoc, by the way, right? So just from industry, 9 months post PhD, and then I started at CAGRI.
Oh, okay. So I think it's a very interesting path. I mean, I would have told you that you should go into academia straight away. So maybe that would make me some kind of a prophet, but I would have told you to go into academia straight. But it's really interesting how you are able to find what you want by doing what you don't necessarily like, but just that whole experience of doing something else leads you to something that you actually really like.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it drives from the point that inaction is never an excuse. You have to do something even if you don't like it.
Yeah. And by the way,
Yeah.
I think it's also important that
Mhm.
people don't get pushed into academia, and I
Right.
do that with all my students. Yes, I want them to succeed. Even when I see the talent, I take the philosophy of my PhD supervisor, Dr. Lisa Leaks at Manitoba. Like, she really didn't force me to go into academia, right? So she kind of said, you know what, this is the talent I see in you. Even though I didn't see it in myself during those times, but I had to come to it, by myself, right? And supervisors as academics, we've got to give our students that opportunity. There are some that will come that know exactly what they want to do. I hear people say, "Oh, from childhood, I know I wanted to be a professor."
Right.
That was not me, and we will see people like that. That some people will know from the word go, this is what they want to do. Some people might not know what they want to do until maybe final year. Some people even after graduation, they still don't know what to do. And as supervisors, we need to take the back seat once we train them or support them to make that decision that will work for them and their families and their future as well.
Right. Just allowing them to essentially own their dreams and own their career choices. If my students are listening, they'll be quite happy because 99.9 of them percent of them tell me they don't know what they want to do. So I think it will be
Yeah.
very reassuring to hear that. And when you started the much dreaded tenure track process,
Yeah.
how was it for you? What you were able to go through the process and obtain tenure, and
Mm.
you are now an associate professor now. Looking back, what are some of the things that worked for you? Did you intentionally strategize? Did you write publish or perish on your wall and look at it every day? What worked for you? How did these things shape up for you in terms of the tenure track process? And what are some of the key lessons that you learned and want to share with us?
Yeah, so I started off as a limited term contract research contract self-funded assistant professor for 2.5 years before I was switched to tenure track, and then with the opportunities that everything I've done in the 2.5 years towards tenure, I counted towards tenure. So I didn't start off from the word go, but I was quite familiar with the whole process. So one of the few things that I can suggest that I did that worked for me was, number one, sit down with my department head and say, what are the things you're looking for as I plan towards tenure? And so in medicine, you could have lots of papers. You could see a statistician you could see papers that have like 25 authors, 30 authors, 40 authors, right? So I asked I asked my department head and said, what is more important, quantity or quality, right? Is it okay if I just be on papers? And we talked about it, and she was just like, Tolu, it's okay to be part of teams, but at the same time, you have to demonstrate that there are works that are led by you, initiated by you as well. So I had that discussion about our expectations about tenure, and this expectation might vary from department to department or field, from one faculty to another faculty. So in certain faculties, first author publications is the most important. You don't need to have 50, 100 publications. Maybe just having 7 or 8 that are first authored in high impact factor journals are more important than any other thing. So you need to sit down with your department head and figure out what is more important. Is simple factor a big deal, or just publishing the work is actually more meaningful? So that's number one. Number two thing that I did was I went back and looked at my off appointment letter to see what are the expectations that were stated there, and this might be very much useful to people that have not really accepted an offer, And I remember before I signed the offer from the University of Calgary, as I spent time with my supervisor and another mentor at the University of Calgary, at the University of Saskatchewan, and say, please, here's my offer letter. What do you think? Is this okay? Are there things I should ask them to change? And I was fortunate that my supervisor said, well, there was an expectation, there's a clause there that said, oh, you're expected to get research funding as a PI from Canadian Institute of Health Research. And my supervisor was like, well, that is not an expectation. You're coming from statistics, which is mostly in the domain of NSAC. So can you ask them to change that? And, changing some of the wordings can actually help you as you go in the whole process, right? Because by the time you are going for tenure, by the time you submit that tenure application package, they are going to look at what is the expectation on your appointment and how you have actually met each of those criteria that was listed in your offer letter. So I tell them to say, okay, go back to that appointment letter, look at what are the expectations, and then start preparing a document where you work towards fulfilling each of those responsibilities, where you have actually met each of those expectations that are listed in your offer letter. As a matter of fact, if you're writing the cover letter for your tenure, I tell people to write it in a way that they match everything that was listed in their appointment letter. That would be very great. And finally, there are lots of things I can talk about, but I will talk about this third one to say, for each university, there is the faculty association. And most of the time, at least annually, they actually have what we call tenure and promotion workshops. And I will encourage every young assistant professor, anybody on tenure track, to take advantage of that. Even if you are not ready for tenure, don't wait until year 5 or year 4 when you're applying for tenure and promotion to attend our workshop. Start attending from the first day, from the first year, because the more you attend, the more you get familiar with what is expected, what are the things that are changing in the tenure and application process, and you can prepare yourself accordingly. So I started attending the first year, and I was just like, oh, you're just starting, you don't qualify. I said, yes, I know I'm not applying for tenure this year, but I want to know exactly what goes on there. And so every day, from every year, I attend. And one of the things I learned from the workshop at Calgary was that the moment you start your academic appointment, have a folder or a box in your office where everything you've got, maybe a thank you note from your student, put it there, print it out and put it in that file. Or you got a letter thanking you for peer review, put it there. And they said maintain a folder or a bag where you put everything that's related to tenure. And so by the time you want to apply for tenure, you're not scrambling to say, okay, what should I put it there? You have a folder where every good thing, every good word, every good message you've got, every thank you note you've got for what you do in terms of contribution to the university and to the career goes to, and you could just draw on that file. So I learned that from that workshops. And finally, the other thing I'll talk about, and I'm sorry, this is very important to clarify.
Please, go ahead.
The final point, the fourth point I'm going to talk about tenure process is make the academic collective agreement of the faculty association and the university, make that document your best friend. The expectations for tenure for faculty are listed there. The collective agreement between the university and the faculty association, you will find all the expectations there. So typically in most universities, there are expectations around teaching and education. Then there's expectation around research, and there's expectation around service. And when you know those three expectations, then map them to your appointment letter. So I'm not sure if this happens in the US, but in Canada, most of the time, by the time you have an appointment letter, there'll be expectation, okay, you spend 50% research, 30% teaching and 20% service. So when you have that in your appointment letter, then you can go back to look at that collective agreement and to say, okay, the three areas: education, research, and service or leadership, and you map that to your expectations. 50% research, 30% teaching, 20% research, and then that can help you to figure out, okay, where should I put most of my effort?
When I look at your story, you seem to two things. The first thing I see is that you've been quite productive. What do you have any unique productivity tip that we would give to an assistant professor, a young academic? How do you, in your own way, maximize your productivity?
Yeah, thanks, Albert. The advice I will give to young African professors or professors of African descent is to just pay attention to mentorship. If you see me very productive, it's not because I have any special magic or I have to go into mountains to write. I'll just have some rituals. I think I've benefited from being mentored by some of the best in my field in Canada. And mentorship is not something that has to be passive. I was intentional in actually seeking out the people that are productive in my area, in my field. And I actually reach out to them intentionally at conferences and say, you know what, I'd like you to mentor me. This is who I am. I want to be like you when I grow up, and, we just joke about it. And I intentionally make our time, to schedule meetings with them. These are very busy people. And I just reach out and just, okay, I have some questions, mostly 30 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes. Sometimes I go to conferences where I know they will be and just require time. And so I have two of them. One is my PhD supervisor, by the way. I still collaborate with my supervisor. And even though she was my PhD advisor, I had to intentionally say, okay, I've graduated from you, but I still want you to be my mentor, right? Just intentionally create that relationship. And so that has helped me to kind of say, okay, these are the things you should be doing now. These are the things. So I found that very helpful. So I'm going to encourage people just on tenure track. And even after you become tenured, it doesn't stop. Right? You find people in your field that can mentor you and help you. The other point I will mention is collaboration. You seek out opportunities to collaborate with people, and that gives you learn from others as you work with them as well. It's not just about being by yourself. We do better when we work in teams, not just when we go alone, right? So those would be the two pieces of advice that I can give on that.
Thank you. That's very insightful. Do you have any last words for our audience? It's been a pleasant Saturday morning with you. Do you have any last thoughts that you want to share before we bring our discussion to an end?
Yeah, thanks, Albert. I just want to encourage every aspiring professor, people that are just starting out, or even my colleagues. Let's do what we love. It might be difficult at first. I just want to encourage you, especially PhD students are just like, I don't think I'm going to be able to make this. If this is your dream, I want you to just give it your best shot. We as Black people of African descent, we have so much opportunity. We have so much to give, and I just want you to put in the work and give it your very best. You have to forget about naysayers. I've had people tell me when I was a grad student, forget it. Even Canadians are not getting what the Caucasian Canadians are not getting academic position. How do you think you're going to get an academic position? Just forget about it. No. I want to encourage you and I want to inspire you to keep on doing the best that you can do. Put that dream there. If you work for it, if you believe it, it's going to happen. Right?
Great. Oh, thank you. That's very inspirational. And just a random comment. since you are from Nigeria, which one would you pick? Ghana Jollof or Ghana Jollof?
I was hoping that you're going to talk about that. Of course, it's Nigerian jollof rice. There's something about Nigerian jollof rice that is so good, and especially when it's cooked with smoke. I was hoping you're going to bring this up, but so thanks for bringing it up. So I'm rooting
Yeah,
for jollof rice.
yeah, okay, fine. Well, anyways, well, thank you so much, Tolu. It's really been a pleasure. I personally have learned a lot from here, like your experience, from your story, from those pieces of advice. I believe strongly that collectively there's a lot that we can do to support the next generation now and not sort of wait till we are old. So I'm happy that you've kind of shared your time with us, and I hope that this will only be the beginning and not the end of the conversation. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thanks, Abba.
Yeah, have a good day. Thank you.
And you too.